Hello, I'm Matthew McKibbin. Welcome to Bedtime Stories. Thank you for enjoying my previous bedtime story video. I hope it helped all of you have sweet dreams and good night's sleep. So today I'm back with another bedtime story video, and I'm going to read to you more stories of Thomas the Tank Engine. And our first one is Danger at the Dieselworks. The sky over the island of Soldier was usually calm and blue, but one day, as Thomas and Percy were enjoying a ride in the countryside, they saw black clouds of smoke. They knew there was a fire, and they raced to help. An old farm shed was in flames. Thomas and Percy let the farm hands take buckets of water from their tanks. Luckily, a new engine named Belle arrived. She could shoot water from her tanks. The flames fizzled and went out. Everybody agreed that Belle was a really useful engine. Belle was happy to help, but she knew Soldier needed a real fire engine. "You need Flynn, the fire engine. He's a real hero," she peeped. Sir Topham Hatt thought this was an excellent idea. The next day, Thomas took Belle on a tour of the island of Sodor. They visited Brenham Docks, Catford Station, and Thomas's branch line. Belle liked everything she saw. Thomas and Belle didn't ask Percy to go with them on the tour. Diesel noticed that Percy was lonely and slid up next to him. "Thomas is very busy with that new blue engine," Diesel hissed. He invited Percy to visit the Dieselworks. Percy wasn't sure he should go to the Dieselworks. Thomas always said steamies shouldn't puff there, but Thomas didn't seem to care about Percy lately. Percy slowly rolled to the Dieselworks. His axles tingled. "Hello, Percy," boomed Diesel Ted. "What an honor. Please come in." The Dieselworks was dark, grimy, and a little scary, but the engines were all very nice, especially Den and Dart. They fixed the diesels, but they didn't even have a crane. "You should tell Sir Topham Hatt you need a new Dieselworks," puffed Percy. "He doesn't listen to diesels," said Diesel 10. Percy had an idea. "I'll ask Thomas to tell Sir Topham Hatt. He always listens to Thomas." Diesel 10 smiled. When Percy returned to the steamworks, he saw that Flynn, the fire engine, had arrived. Everyone was impressed by Flynn because he was bold and red and shiny. Percy felt very unimportant indeed. Only Kevin listened to Percy's story. Kevin couldn't believe the Dieselworks didn't have a crane. "Kevin, if you were there, you'd be a hero," Percy puffed. Kevin liked the idea of being a hero very much. That night, when Percy returned to Tim Shed's, he saw something that made his boiler bubble. Flynn was in his beard. "If I'm not wanted here," Percy thought, "I'll go someplace where they do like me. Percy found Kevin, and together they rolled to the Dieselworks. They stayed there all night, something no steamy had ever done before. Back at the steamworks the next day, Percy told the steam engines where he had been. Everyone was shocked. Thomas's firebox fizzled. Victor was angry that Kevin was still at the Dieselworks. He rattled off to tell Sir Topham Hatt. Percy and Thomas raced to the Dieselworks. Thomas said he would help them get a new building, but Diesel 10 wasn't interested. Since Victor isn't at the steamworks, we're going to take it over, and we want you to lead us, Percy. Percy proudly led the Diesels to the steamworks, but when they got there, no one listened to him. The steamwork is ours, roared Diesel 10, and we're not giving it back. Worst of all, Diesel 10 said Thomas was being held a prisoner at the Dieselworks. Percy knew he made a terrible mistake. He quickly went back to the Dieselworks, where Dan and Dart were holding Thomas. As Percy screeched to a stop, Spark Scrub, his wheel, started a fire. Now he had to save Thomas and put out a fire. Percy knew that only one engine could help him now. He raced to find Flynn, the fire engine. Percy found him at the Soldier Search and Rescue Center. With pistons pumping, the two engines puffed to save Thomas. At the Dieselworks, Percy convinced Dan and Dart to release Thomas. All the engines watched as Flynn boldly pumped water onto the fire. Hooray, Flynn! Thomas peeped. He's a real hero, Percy puffed. The flames hissed and shrank and sputtered out. Thomas and Percy collected all the steamies and hurried to save the steamworks. The Diesels refused to leave. Taking things and using trickery is wrong, Thomas peeped. We can help you get a new Dieselworks, but you have to be fair with us. Suddenly, Sir Topham Hatt arrived. He was very cross. Diesel 10, he said sternly, you have caused confusion and delay. Because of you, none of my engines has been really useful. Diesel 10 whimpered and his claw crumbled. Sir Topham Hatt explained that the Diesels would get a new Dieselworks. That was always my plan. Everything takes time, and everyone must wait their turn. The Diesels and Steamies agreed to work together to build the new Dieselworks. When the new Dieselworks was completed, all the engines came together for the grand opening. Sir Topham Hatt was very proud. The new Dieselworks shows what can happen when all kinds of really useful engines work together, he said. Everyone cheered, and all the engines peeped proudly. Percy and Thomas were especially happy. They were glad to be friends again. They giggled and jiggled and puffed with joy. Calling all engines. Summer is a busy time on the island of Sodor. The engines love to show travelers around the island. They visit the seaside, the windmill, and the new Sodor suspension bridge. One morning, Sir Topham Hatt came to the sheds. He had a very important announcement to make. A new airport is being built on Sodor, and I need you all to help. The engines were very excited. Thomas and Percy were coupled to freight cars full of bricks and timber to take to the airport building site. Imagine all the travelers, Chuck Thomas, and all the airplanes, puffed Percy. Then Ari and Bert arrived. Stinky Steamy's in the way again, grumbled Bert. This made Thomas and Percy cross. They didn't want to work near diesels either. The diesels were oily and they seemed very different to the Steamies. Thomas, Percy, Ari, and Bert worked at the airport all afternoon. They shunted freight cars full of bricks and tar. The diesels bumped Thomas and bitched Percy. Dirty diesels, moaned Percy. I don't like them. Thomas and Percy had been so excited about working at the airport, but Ari and Bert were there and now it wasn't any fun. That night a hurricane swept through the island. It was the strongest wind the engines had ever known. All night long the wind howled down the tracks. It tore down the trees and ripped off roofs. The next morning, Thomas gasped at what he saw. Bust my buffers, he cried. Look at what the wind has done. The seaside had been battered, the windmill was wrecked, and the Sodor suspension bridge had collapsed. Thomas felt terrible. Sir Topham Hatt came to see the engines. The hurricane has done lots of damage, he said sadly. Everyone will have to work even harder if we want to open the airport. Edward and Henry brought bricks to the airport building site, while Diesel arrived with a load of timber. But the Diesels weren't talking to the steam engines, and the steam engines weren't talking to the Diesels. Everyone was cross. That afternoon, Thomas had collected some paint for the bridge. He popped into the builder's yard to pick up the pots of paint. But Diesel was in the yard too. Now I'll show Thomas who's best, Diesel whispered. And he gave the freight cars an extra hard shove. Paint pots flew into the air and splattered down all over Thomas. Thomas looked very silly indeed. Spotty boiler, laughed Diesel, and he rolled away. I'll show those Diesels, Thomas huffed. So the next time Thomas saw Ari, he gave him a biff. And when Ari saw James, he gave him a bash. Soon the Diesels and the Steamies were biffing and banging and being bashed all over the island. The engines were in a terrible mess, and no work had been done. That evening, Sir Topham Hatt came to see the engines. He was very angry. You have caused confusion and delay. The seaside is still a mess, the bridge isn't painted, and we will not be able to open the airport. No travelers will come to Sodor this year. No travelers, moaned Thomas. And no airplanes, groaned Percy. All the engines knew they had behaved badly, and they were very sad. That night, Thomas had a dream. He was puffing along a misty mountain track, and there was Lady. Lady was a very special steam engine. She worked high up in the mountains. Lady was shunting trucks with Rusty, the diesel engine. Thomas was surprised. We always finish our jobs when we work together, thought the lady. The next morning when Thomas woke up, he had an idea. First he went straight to see Mavis. Mavis was a kind diesel engine, and Thomas knew she would listen. He told Mavis that he wanted the steam engines and diesels to work together. Mavis agreed. It was the only way to get the airport open in time. Let's have a big meeting with all of the engines at the coaling stop tomorrow, Thomas puffed. Thomas and Mavis went to see the other engines to tell them about the meeting. Thomas told Percy, then James, then Emily. Mavis told Diesel, then Ari, then Bert. The next day, the engines gathered at the coaling stop. The steam engines and the diesels were all lined up. Thomas blew his whistle. Steamies and diesels need to work together, shouted Thomas. If the airport doesn't open, it will be bad for all the engines. Both steam engines and diesel engines need passengers and freight to be useful. If we work together, we can get the job done, thought Thomas. All of the engines agreed. After that, the engines worked harder than ever. They hauled bricks and timber and cleared away debris from the storm. They moved paint and tar and made sure there were enough workers to do each important job. And all the engines were careful not to bump or block each other. Even Diesel 10, the biggest diesel engine of all, agreed to help. Soon, the engines were even enjoying working together, smiling and joking as friends will do. Before long, the airport was finished. It had shiny buildings and a big tall control tower, and the runway was long and smooth. The engines were very proud and very excited. I can't wait for the travelers, puffed Thomas. And look, peeped Percy, here comes the first airplane. Diesel 10 means trouble. Thomas the Tank Engine was a little blue engine who always tried to be really useful. He and all his friends lived on the island of Sodor. Life on the island of Sodor was very peaceful and happy, but on this beautiful island where trains could talk and the railroad was really reliable and right on time, trouble was brewing. Sir Topham Hatt, the railroad director, was going on vacation. Mr. Conductor, who traveled from place to place in a shower of gold dust, was coming to help him out. I have to go and meet Mr. Conductor, Thomas said. He's going to take care of us while Mr. Topperhat is away. I think we can take care of ourselves, puffed Gordon. Whoosh! Suddenly, a big diesel engine grazed past them. Get out of my way, you blue puffballs, the diesel growled. What was that? Asked Gordon nervously. That was a problem, Thomas said as the diesel screeched away. That's Diesel 10. So Toppa has sent him to help us steam engines, but Diesel 10 is behaving as though he hates us. I think he's a really scary engine. Puh, grumbled Gordon. Really useful engines like us have to be brave, little Thomas. Thomas agreed, but he couldn't help feeling frightened. Meanwhile, Diesel 10 was planning to get rid of the steam engines once and for all. He wanted to run the railroad. That night, Diesel 10 sneaked up to the engine shed and threatened Mr. Conductor with his jagged claw. Make the most of tonight, Twinkle Toes, hissed Diesel 10, because you won't like tomorrow. Mr. Conductor had another problem too. I've suddenly lost all my sparkle, he sighed to Thomas. To get it back, I must find some more gold dust. Thomas and the other engines knew they had to help Mr. Conductor find the source of the magic gold dust. While the boss, Sir Topperhat, is away, we cats will play, heard Diesel 10 to his pals. Splattered and Dutch gulped. We're going to make life miserable for those steaming heaps of trash on wheels, Diesel 10 continued. This island doesn't need them, it needs diesels. There's no use for steam engines these days. They're history. But why about Mr. Conductor? Asked the spider. Isn't he going to stop us? Dudge asked. Mr. Conductor needs his magic gold dust to keep an eye on us, snickered Diesel 10. And no, he can't, because he just run out. A door opened on Diesel 10's cap roof, and out came his huge metal claw. I'll take care of all of them with this, said Diesel 10. He lifted his claw high above them, but then it dropped and hit him on the head. I don't think he meant to do that, Splatter and Dudge said to each other. Little did the Diesels know that Toby, the tram engine, had overheard their plans. Toby told the other engines. Then he followed the Diesels to see what they were going to do next. The Diesels were plotting to destroy the magic buffers that led to Mr. Conductor's magic railroad. We don't know where the entrance to the magic railroad is, and we don't know which are the right buffers to destroy, said Diesel 10 to Splatter and Dodge. So we'll have to destroy all of them. Toby knew he had to do something to stop Diesel 10. I've got to distract him, thought Toby. Clang! Toby rang his bell as loud as he could. It's the old teapot! Shouted Diesel 10. Smash him! Diesel 10 tried to catch Toby with his claw, but he knocked over a pile of scrap right onto his own tracks. Diesel 10's path was blocked. Boss, did you mean to do that? Asked Splatter and Dodge. Grrr, Diesel 10 growled. I've always mean what I do. Diesel 10 was mad when he found out that Thomas had traveled the Magic Railroad to bring back Lady, the golden engine. Lady was the source of the magic gold dust. She could help Mr. Conductor foil Diesel 10's plans. Diesel 10 chased Lady, but Thomas raced between them. All three engines headed toward a dangerous old big duck. Lady crossed the old big duck. Stones began to fall. When Thomas crossed the big duck, more stones fell, and a big gap appeared in the track. Thomas jumped the gap just in time. But Diesel 10 couldn't stop. He tumbled far below onto a barge filled with sludge. Lady was safe, and there would always be plenty of gold dust. You're a really useful engine, Gordon told Thomas. Beep, beep, Thomas said, and popped home into the sunset. Well, isn't that interesting? I hope you enjoyed all the stories. You know, my favorite part was when they said that Lady, the golden engine, was the answer to Mr. Conductor's question to find the gold dust, which I find a good thing. You know, I've actually seen the movie Thomas and the Magic Railroad from that story that I just read to you, and I loved it so much as a kid, as a teenager, and I still do. So, yeah, I hope you enjoyed all the stories that I read to you today. And for what Shelley Duvall said, when you write stories, you can make believe anything. And when you dream, you can make believe anything too. So, I hope you all have sweet dreams and hope to see you next time.